Welcome to TV, Tennessee Valley Church. This week we're looking at the story of Joseph, a story that ought to give us all great hope. So where else would we be? We're just outside the town of New Hope at the wonderful restaurant known as Grandmother's House. Has anything gone wrong for you lately? Have you felt like life is unfair? Have you been treated unfairly? Unjustly accused, perhaps? Felt like you were getting more than your fair share of bad breaks? Well, have I got a story of hope for you. Jacob, the lead character in last week's story, had 12 sons. But Jacob had a favorite son, Joseph. Jacob gave Joseph, and only Joseph, an expensive, flashy coat of many colors. Then he posted a picture of Joseph and his coat on Instagram. Well, he would have if he could have. And the other brothers hated Joseph. To be candid, Joseph flaunted his favorite son status, telling his brothers of dreams that made him look good and made them look bad. As you might imagine, those dreams really ticked off Joseph's brothers. And the brothers caught him alone one day wearing that coat of many colors they hated so much. So they stripped him, they whipped him, and they shipped him. Sold him to a caravan of merchants headed toward Egypt. Then they took that flashy coat of Joseph's and they ripped it and they dipped it. Dipped it in goat's blood, took it to their father Jacob and led him to believe that Joseph had been killed by wild animals. Jacob, Joseph's father, was devastated. When Joseph arrived in Egypt, he was sold as a slave to a wealthy man named Potiphar. Potiphar really liked Joseph. Mrs. Potiphar liked him too. Mrs. Potiphar liked him a lot. In fact, day after day, she overtly tried to seduce him. One day, she had him alone in the house, so she grabbed him by the collar. And the Bible says in Genesis 39:12 that Joseph ran out of the house. He did not stick around for a discussion of the ethical implications of illicit relationships. He ran. Joseph knew that were he to stay, the temptation might very well be too great. People of strong character know when it's time to get out of a tempting situation. I don't think I have to paint you a picture here, but whether you're a teenager or an adult, you might find yourself in a situation kind of like Joseph's, where your pulse and your imagination are racing. Your desires and your opportunity have come to a critical intersection. And if you stay, you're going to do something you will long regret. Are you getting the picture? In those moments, you'd better run. Well, Mrs. Potiphar was so angry over Joseph's rebuff that she falsely accused Joseph of trying to come on to her. Naive Mr. Potiphar had Joseph thrown into prison. 2 long years passed with Joseph languishing innocently behind bars. Then Pharaoh, the leader of Egypt's government, had a dream. And Pharaoh heard there was a foreigner in one of his prisons, Joseph, who might be able to interpret the dream. And Joseph did just that. It was a dream of 7 upcoming years of abundance in Egypt and then 7 years of famine. Sure enough, just as Joseph had predicted, 7 years of bountiful harvests followed. And the Egyptians stored up their excess in preparation for the famine Joseph had predicted. When the famine came, people from all over came to Egypt to buy that which the Egyptians had stored up. Joseph was appointed by Pharaoh as VP for R&D, that's Vice Pharaoh for reaping and distributing. Those who wanted to buy food came to Joseph. One day, a bunch of brothers from Canaan showed up, hoping to get some food to take back to their families and their father, Jacob. I can only imagine Joseph's shock that day when he looked up and behold, coming through the massive doors, escorted by Egyptian guards across the elegant room toward where Joseph was seated, were his brothers. Those jealous brothers who had sold him into slavery. I imagine that as soon as Joseph saw them, painful old feelings and memories welled up inside him. His brothers didn't recognize him, though. The majestic man seated before them looked nothing like the bloody, frightened boy in the back of the wagon headed to Egypt a few years earlier. And now, Joseph had a decision to make. Would he give them food? Joseph turned to his servants and said, "Take these men to my house, get the best food ready, for they will dine with me at noon." Then Joseph addressed his bewildered brothers. "You don't recognize me, do you? I'm your little brother, Joseph," he said. The brothers' faces lost their color and their jaws hit the ground. Then Joseph said to his slack-jawed siblings, "Don't worry, fellas, I'm not mad. God has used my suffering to allow me to help lots of people, including you." It takes a strong man, a strong woman to repay evil with kindness, to do unto others as we would have them do unto us, and not as they have done unto us. Chips on our shoulders weigh heavily on our hearts, so we have to make the hard choice to let it go, to treat people well who have not treated us well, to let go of the bitterness that is so unhealthy for us. Joseph's family came to live with him in Egypt. He was reunited with his father Jacob. Joseph watched his nieces and nephews and great-nieces and nephews grow up in the homes that he provided. In Egypt, Joseph married and had 2 sons. He gave his sons names with great meaning. The first one he named Manasseh, for Manasseh sounds like the Hebrew word forget. For, Joseph said, God has allowed me to forget all those bad things that have happened to me. The pain of being stripped, whipped, and shipped, the pain of being impugned and imprisoned, they are only distant memories for me now, he must have thought. The second son, Joseph named Ephraim. Ephraim sounds like the Hebrew word for twice fruitful. For Joseph said, God has prospered me in the land of my sorrow. Contrary to popular belief, the phrase, everything happens for a reason, is not in the Bible. However, in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him. Now that is in the Bible. That's Romans 8:28. And that's hope. Good things can come from painful experiences. In a few minutes, I'm going to be back to tell you one of my favorite recent stories of God working even in a dark situation to bring about something good.
How I live for the moments where I'm still in your presence and all the noise dies down. Lord, speak to me now. You have all my attention. I will linger and listen. I can't miss a thing. Lord, I know my heart wants more of you. My heart wants something new, so I surrender all. All I want is to live within your love, be undone by who you are. My desire is to know you deeper. Lord, I will open up again, throw my fears into the wind. I am desperate for a touch of heaven. In my soul, you're the life in my bones. There is no hesitation in your love and affection. It's the sweetest of all. Lord, I know my heart wants more of you. My heart wants something new, so I surrender all. All I want is to live within your love, be undone by who you are. My desire is to know you deeper. Lord, I will open up again, throw my fears into the wind. I am desperate for a touch of heaven. Touch from you. I open up my heart to you. I open up my heart to you now. So do what only you can. Jesus, have your way in me now. I open up my heart to you. I open up my heart to you now. So do what only you can. Jesus, have your way in me undone by who you are. My desire is to know you deeper. Lord, I will open up again, throw my fears into the wind. I am desperate for a touch of heaven.
Breaking barriers, changing lives, and giving hope to children. That's the purpose of the New Hope Children's Clinic, and the Executive Director, Cindy Williamson, joins us today. Thanks for letting us visit today.
Hey, Lisa. Thank you so much for having us. We're thrilled to be able to share our story.
Well, Travis, his message today is on hope, and what better place giving hope to children. Tell me how this nonprofit works.
Well, we're a nonprofit, school-based pediatrician's office. We used to say health clinic, and I like the word pediatrician's office because that's exactly what we are, just like you'd find anywhere. We're on the school property of the New Hope Elementary School, and the purpose of that is so we can meet these children and care for them where they are, make it easy for them and their families, give them access to the same health care everybody else has.
And health care equals social and academic success. It's so important.
It
for
really
children.
does. It does. If you're not healthy, you're not in the classroom. If you're not in the classroom, you're not becoming a valuable citizen and contributing to to the society that we're meant to contribute to. So since we have been here in 2009, we have seen a jump in graduation rates at New Hope High School and some other areas around us. We have a lot of patients from Grant and Marshall County as well. So we want to get these kids in here, have their well checks, see them when they're sick, catch things that families don't catch, that families don't necessarily know, that a fever may mean something more serious.
Cindy, what kind of family benefits most from the clinic here?
The families that live in the New Hope area. This is an area of generational poverty, a lot of blue-collar workers, a lot of grandparents, great-grandparents raising children. These are families that don't have the money to maybe drive into Huntsville. They don't like to go into Huntsville. They don't like to drive as far as Guntersville or Scottsboro. So we are here to help them. We accept Medicaid insurance, TRICARE insurance, and then the All Kids program in Alabama. We have about 1,000 patients on our rolls, and that's newborn through 19 years old, as long as their insurance will allow them to remain considered a child. That translates into about 3,200 or more appointments, medical appointments each year. So we're seeing these, the babies, the newborns we'll see several times before they're 3 years old, upwards of 18 times for vaccine visits, well checks, things like that. And then annually, each child needs a well check at least until they're 18 years old.
And you mentioned you opened in 2009.
We did.
And there was a little girl who was here at that time, Kylie. And that's been a success story too, because you said she's recently graduated.
Yeah, she was living with her grandparents. Her parents were out of the picture. She was born with some issues. Started coming here when we opened in 2009. She graduated this past year, 2022 in May. Wonderfully, she was in the band. She was a good student, very healthy child now, and is moving on to do great things.
And you also provide mental health, which is so important.
We do. New Hope is an area where there are more children in need of mental health than any other area of the 3 school systems in the Huntsville area. So we have a school-based therapist from the Enrichment Center who sits here at the clinic 2 days a week just to see our patients. She sees kids for behavioral issues, depression, anxiety, the normal things that you think about when you think mental health. And those things have increased in the last several years. So her numbers have increased, her patient load has increased. She's here 2 days a week, and then she's at the New Hope High School 3 days a week. So we're very fortunate, very blessed to have her here.
Providing health and hope to local children. Thanks, Cindy. NewHopeChildren'sClinic.org.
Joseph named his second son Ephraim. Ephraim sounds like the Hebrew word for twice fruitful. For Joseph said, "God has prospered me in the land of my sorrow." 3 Sundays ago, my wife Carrie and I traveled to a residential treatment facility in Chilton County called Turning Point. Part of the afternoon was a presentation on the brain of one who has a predisposition to addiction. We learned why one person can have a glass of wine in the evening and never feel a negative impact, and for a few, that glass of wine is like an entryway to hell on earth for them and immeasurable pain for those around them. The person making that presentation was Robbie Keeble. Robbie came to a point in his presentation where he spoke of the power of hope. He said, "Let me tell you a story." It was his story. He went back several years to when he was a high-level executive in a major company. I found his story so intriguing that I emailed him and asked him to write down his story for me. I told him, "I want to tell your story and I want to get everything right." And he did. Remember, from the outside looking in, Robbie was living the dream. But, and these are his words, after 17 years of active drug addiction, all the while he was a highly functioning executive, by the way. After 17 years of active drug addiction and destroying my entire life as a result of drugs and alcohol, I lost my family and my marriage, my home, and my career. There was a warrant for my arrest. I was about $87,000 in debt at that point, most of it from drugs and alcohol. My life was pretty much destroyed. So on this particular day in December 1987, after everything was gone, he wrote, I decided to run away and wound up in a dark, dingy hotel room outside of Atlanta. He checked into the hotel room without knowing if he would ever check out. His hopelessness was overwhelming, and he had lots of his drugs of choice in his bags. He continued, after 3 days of using and being in a blackout and delusional and probably psychotic, I woke up. At that point, I was extremely depressed and hopeless and extremely afraid of and very lonely after sitting there for several hours contemplating death or help. Something, I don't know exactly what, but something guided me to the nightstand and I opened the drawer and picked up what was a Gideon Bible. And he said, I know this sounds like a commercial for the Gideons, but this is exactly what happened. I opened the drawer of the bedside table and pulled out the Gideon Bible. I just happened to open it to Psalm 51, and I read the prayer, restore to me the joy of your salvation. And he said that felt hopeless. For joy, he believed, was impossible. But he said I kept reading, and I got to the part where it asks what God loves, and it says, a broken spirit and a contrite heart. And I thought, well, I am broken and I am sorry. Maybe that's enough, he thought. He was a grown man, but he said to us that afternoon, I did what good Southern boys do. I called my mama, and she said, come home. He did. He got in treatment. And now, all these years later, he's pouring into people who are addicted and feel as hopeless as he once did, helping to run programs that give hope to people many have written off. His turning point was opening the drawer to find a Gideon Bible. But then he had to decide whether something good would come from his suffering. So here's our lesson from the story of Joseph. Sometimes our own choices are bad, and thus we suffer. Sometimes others make choices that hurt us, and thus we suffer. Life is unfair, and thus we suffer. But the God of redemption and new beginnings has enabled countless people like Robbie and like Joseph to turn their suffering into something beautiful. I'm not being naive when I say God can do that for you if you'll let Him and if you'll do your work. Now that's hope, new hope.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father.
If you're not able to join us physically here at 600 Governors Drive, whether because of distance, mobility, schedule, or some other reason, you still can be a member of First Baptist Huntsville. Email me at travis@fbchsv.org. Let me know of your desire for membership, and I'll help you get started. Join hands with us as we attempt to join hands with God Himself in His mission to the world.